Hello friends, welcome to another video of Codelligent. This is continuation of our LINQ series. So if you are new here, do check out our part 1 and part 2 before proceeding with this part 3. So in this video, we will try to understand the different type of joins which are available in LINQ. Why exactly we need joins? So joins are used for combining two sequences or two collections and produce a result. So it is similar to SQL joins, which you might be using. Like if you are familiar with SQL, you might have used joins there. So suppose there are two tables and you want to get data by combining these two tables, then you use joins. So similarly here in LINQ, if you have two collections or two sequences and you want to get a result by combining them, then you will go for LINQ joins. So there are different type of joins available in LINQ, but the most famous ones are inner join, group join and left outer join. So we will be looking in detail in this, and there are some other joins which are not that popular, which are like non-EQ join and cross join. So we will not be looking into that in this video. We are using two collections in this demo. So one will be students, one will be classes or standard. If we are using one particular class, then we are naming it as standard because class is a reserved keyword. So we can have like different properties in student class, that is like roll number, name, gender, standard, etc. And in class we can have ID, class teacher, fees, etc. So there will be a collection of student class, that will be students, and collection of standards that can be named as classes. So there is one factor which you need to keep in mind, is there is a field in students, that is standard, which is connecting with the class. So in SQL terms, you can say it is like a primary key, foreign key relationship kind of thing. So wherein this ID will be equal to this standard. So that means any student who is having standard like 3, so he belongs to the class ID 3. So that is how we maintain the relationship between these two collections. So with this understanding, let's look into inner join. So what exactly is inner join? So you can see on the right side there is a Venn diagram. So if suppose there is a collection A and a collection B, inner join gives you the common thing. So that means if you have any particular property which you are using for joining these two collections, and then only the ones which are matching will be returned. So this join produces a flat sequence of items. So what it is like, I'll be explaining in the demo, and the order in which you join them doesn't matter. So code wise, if you see how we do it is, if you look at the query syntax, then we say some variable equal to from S in students, that is the first collection, join. So this is the keyword which you will be using. C in classes, so classes is another collection. Then we will say on S dot standard equals C dot ID. So these two parameters, this is the parameter from students collection, this is the parameter from classes collection, but we are establishing a relationship here by saying this standard is equal to this ID. So this is the way we are telling the relationship between these two collections. Then you will say select new, and you want whatever you want to select out of these two collections. So I am defining a new name. So I am saying student name, which will be coming from S, that is nothing but students. So S dot name, and next property I am defining as class teacher, which will be coming from this collection. So that is C dot class teacher. The output which you get in this students will be again an IEnumerable, or you can say it as a list or a collection, which will have, each object will have two parameters. First parameter will be student name, second parameter will be class teacher name. And the same we get when we use our extension method based syntax. So there we will say students dot join bracket starts, and since students is the first collection, the first parameter inside the join will be the second collection, so that is nothing but classes. Then third parameter, you have to define the variable or the property which will be the like how we are giving here, like standard and ID. These are the two properties of the class of the collections which are defining the relationship. So next we have to give those two. So S lambda expression s dot standard c lambda expression c dot id. So now standard and id are the ones which are making the relationship, and then the last parameter will be the return kind of statement, like what we want to return out of this join. So here we use it as like select query to return it. Here we will be defining it in the fourth parameter. So s comma c, so we are defining two variables which will be coming in. So lambda expression new, again we are defining a new type by saying student name is equal to coming from this s collection, s dot name, class teacher equal to c dot class teacher. So these two are equivalent. But one thing which you need to keep in mind when you are using this type of inner join is, now we are defining that my first collection's standard property equals to the second collection's id property. So only these two properties values, when they match, only those records will be brought in by this joining queries. So that means if in collection A you have like standard 1 2 3 4, and in this you have 1 2 3 4 5, then the common intersection will be only 1 2 3 4. So you will not get the fifth element out. So again, in this the order in which you use doesn't matter, because the common intersection will be always the same. So let's see this and understand using the code. So I am in Visual Studio now. So I have created a console application, and to save time I have created two classes already. So first one is student class, where I have roll number, name, standard and gender, and there is a static method which I have created, get students, which gives me a list of student. So inside I have created some dummy data for student, where you see you can have roll numbers like 101, 102, so on till 108, then some name, then gender and some standard. So this standard, you will notice there is one student without any standard, so there is no standard allocated to that particular student. And there is a standard class wherein I have id, class teacher and fees. So here you have another static method called get classes, which gives you a list of standard. So here we have defined some dummy data by creating the standard objects, that is id, class teacher and fees. So this is like 10, 8, 4, 6, 4 are the different standards, and their class teachers and their fees. So again, one thing if you notice, that is like here we have a student who doesn't have any standard, plus here we have a standard 4 related to which there are no students available here. So if you see, there are 10, 8, 6, but there is no record with standard 4. So now I will first get the data here. So students equal to, so I'll have student class dot, I'll say get students, so I'll get the students. Next I will get the classes, so I'll say classes equal to standard dot get classes. Yeah, so now two collections are ready. So now first we will see the inner join, so that is where maybe some variable name data. Yeah, so now we will see say from s in students, then we will use join c in classes, then we'll say on s dot the connectivity we are making using the standard property equals c dot id. So we are establishing the relationship using standard and id. Now we will say select new, and we'll define a new type. So first one will be like maybe student name, which is nothing but coming from s dot name, and I will define maybe class teacher, or maybe just I can put normal teacher also. So teacher equal to c dot class teacher. So I just renamed this so that you don't get confused with this class teacher and this class teacher. So this is a new type which you are defining now in this, and this is the already existing property in the standard class. So I'll just close it. Now I'll use a for each loop to loop in this data, and I will do a console.writeLine, and here I will print the collection, like I will go through each item. So I will say item dot student name along with that student's teacher. So I'll say item dot, you can see now teacher is available here, teacher. So now if I run this, so you will see a set of data, Thomas and the teacher, Chris with the teacher, Lucy with the teacher. So again you can see Max return is repeated, Ajay is repeated, Geeta is repeated. So this is like just a plain set of combination. It's a joining two collections without any other grouping things. So it is just plain matching. Now but you will observe here, if you go to the student class and you observe the data, so here there is a student called Ravi which is missing here because there was no matching record found in the other collection. And also if you go to standard and you check the data here, there is a teacher called Rohan which is not available here. So because again there was no matching data found in the previous collection, so these two data in the collection has been ignored. So this is how an inner join works. So we will see the same thing using our extension method syntax. So I'll just comment this and I'll use the same variable name. So variable data equal to, here we will use the first collection, that is students dot, and I will say join, and then you will see the first parameter is nothing but another collection which is required, inner. Then you have to give the outer key selector, then you have to give the inner key selector. So first we have to give is the second collection, that is nothing but classes. Then you have to give is the outer key selector. Outer key selector means the outer collection, whatever it is, that particular collection's property which you want to use for establishing the relationship. So I will say s dot standard. Next you have to give the inner key selector, that means the inner collections property which you want to use for establishing the relationship. So I will say C, but here if you are using Visual Studio 2019, then you will find a glitch here that it doesn't list me the properties of this standard class. So this is actually a known issue which is reported to Microsoft already. It happens only with Visual Studio 2019. So if you are using any other version like 2017 or previous, then you will get this data properly. So as of now I'll just type it. So you can see even if I type, it doesn't give any error. So it recognizes it, but only problem is the IntelliSense is not working, so which is an issue with Visual Studio 2019. So next, in the last parameter, again it is a result selector. So that means what you want to send out. So here you are writing it using select query, but here you have to just define it in the fourth parameter. So here now you will get two variables as input. So one I can say is the student, another one will be the class, and lambda expression, and you will say new, and here you will define the same thing. So I'll just copy this and put it here. So only the variable name change here. So now it is st.name and it is cl.class teacher, and I'll close it. So now if you run this, the data remains the same. So don't get confused with this. So if at all you use S and C here, it will still work, but then it is not the same variable which you are defining here. So this is a different variable which you are defining. So unlike here, you are directly accessing this variable which you are defining inside. Here it is different. So this is how inner join works. And I have observed, like in normally when you are dealing with joins, it is always good to go with the query based syntax than the method based syntax, because query based syntax is more proper, which you will see in one of the join coming ahead, that is left outer join. So there you will find this way of writing very complicated compared to this way of writing. Now we will see what is a group join. This join pairs each element from first collection with a set of correlated elements from the second collection. So what does that mean is, if you see the code, we are having from C in classes join S in students, and then how we defined the relationship in inner join, same way we have to define on C.id equals S.standard. But there is a difference now where you have to specify the into keyword and you have to define a variable. So that means this way of joining will be the output of this join will be sent into a variable here. One thing which you need to observe is the individual properties of second collection will not be available after join. So that means that inside the select area, that is a select query, you will be able to access C, but you will not be able to access the S. You will be having access only to C and the grouped students. So now when we say select new, you will say class, it's a new property which you are defining, equal to C.id, and also you want to define another property, so you can say class teacher equal to C.class teacher, but if the name you want to give same, so you can avoid that the property name, you can directly say C.class teacher. So this is equivalent of saying class teacher equal to C.class teacher. So it's a short way of writing. And third parameter is nothing but students equal to grouped students. So this grouped student is nothing but this variable. So what the data it will come in this, we will see in the code very soon. You just understand the way you write it, the syntax. And when you are using the method based syntax, you say the first collection classes dot group join. So earlier you saw there was a keyword join which we were using, the method join. Now we have a method called group join, and the second collection students, then the first selector, that is C.id, then the second selector, that is inner selector, that is S.standard. So this is coming from this collection and the id is coming from this collection. Then as we have done in the join method, the fourth parameter defines your result. So that is, we are defining C comma grouped students. So here whatever you are writing into grouped students, that variable you are defining it here, and you are defining one more variable called C, in which the first collections data will be going. A lambda expression new, we are defining the same thing, C class equal to C.id, C.class teacher, and students equal to grouped students. So one thing which I have told again already is the S standard, that is like the second collections individual properties will not be available in this when you are doing group join. And again here one very important point compared to inner join is the order in which you join matters. So if you are using classes first and students second, then the data which you get is different when you use student first and class second. Okay, so we will understand this more in detail using the code. Yes, I am in Visual Studio now. So here we have already those collections which we used for inner join. So now I will define var data equal to, I will use from, first I will use the classes collection, so C in classes, I'll say join S in students on C.id equals S.standard. So till here it is similar to how we have done in inner join. The difference comes when we use into keyword and we define a new variable, maybe some grouped students, some variable, whatever you want. Then we will use select keyword new, and here when you say C dot, So you see you are having access to this particular variable, but same time if you use s dot, so you don't have this variable access here. So now you have access to only this variable and the new variable which you have defined. So now I'll define class. This is my first property, and I will say c dot maybe the ID I want to send, and next I will say class teacher, or maybe just teacher, so that you don't get confused with the same property. It's a new property now, equal to c dot class teacher, and last one is students equal to grouped students. So now if you observe, this grouped student is again an enumerable of student. That means after doing this grouping based on this condition, whatever the list of student we are getting, like CID is equal to s dot standard. So every class ID under which the matching students whatever you get, that has been made as a list, and that list has been sent in this new variable, and you will see that is a enumerable of student. So we'll see the data how it comes, and then you will have more clarity. So I am using for each, and I will say in data. Now I will have first console.writeLine, where I will type the I will put some demarcation here, maybe so that you can understand, and here I will say the item dot, now you'll say class, or maybe we can print the teacher name, and then you need another for each to loop in the second collection of students. So now I'll say here std in item dot students. Now you see students is again enumerable, so we are looping in that, and we are having one more console.writeLine here. So I will leave some 3-4 spaces here so that there is indentation when you are printing, and here I will say std dot maybe I can just print name. So now let's see what the output is. So when you run this, now you can see there is a class teacher of some class under which there are 2 students, then again a class teacher, there are 2 students, then again there is a class teacher, then there are 3 students, and there is a class teacher under which there are no students. So this is how a group join works. So that's why when you do this grouping, you get the classes and you have grouped the classes. So now under each class there are multiple students. That's why this student individually is not accessible here, whereas all the collection of students, like if this is the first class, under that we have 2 students, so those 2 students will be grouped and put into this variable. That's why you are able to access it internally here, only this grouped one. So this is how it works, but you will notice like there is no data under this data under this particular class, because there is no matching element of student for this particular class. So that also will be printed here. So this is how a group join works. So now we will see the same thing using the method based syntax. So again that will be like var data, the first collection, that is nothing but our classes, dot the method group join. So you will notice here the join is done using the keyword join itself, but when you come to method based syntax, you are not using join method, now you are using group join method. So next is the other collection, students, then C, that is nothing but your outer key selector, C dot ID. Next is the inner key selector, so maybe S, so S dot. Now again you will see the glitch which is there in Visual Studio 2019. So I'll say standard, and the last parameter where you will have 2 variables. So first one will be the class variable, which is coming from the first collection, like how we got the C, and the second one will be grouped students. and now we will define what you want to return. So here we will return the same, like first parameter, first property will be class, where I will say it is cl dot id. Second will be teacher, that is nothing but cl dot class teacher, and third one will be students, which is nothing but our grouped students. And I'll just close this. So now if you run this, you will get the same data. So this is how a group join works, and when you want to group the data by joining two collections. So most of the cases we will be using these two type of joins, that is nothing but our inner join and group join. Apart from that, we have one more third join, which is nothing but left outer join. So now we will try to see what is left outer join. So it is similar to inner join, but the way we write it using the syntax of group join, but again the output will be similar to inner join with some extra data. So you have seen in the inner join Venn diagram that we used to get only this common area, but now in the left outer join you will get the data of the left collection also. So nothing but the common between the two collections and the left collections data. So there is a new keyword which is introduced here, so that is default if empty. So we'll see the syntax how we write it. So first we'll say from S in students, so this is the first collection, join C in classes, so this is the second collection. Now we'll say on S dot standard equals C dot id. So till here we used to have our inner joins syntax, then we had into grouped students, so this is our group joins syntax. So now you have till here you have the syntax of group join, but after that now we introduced from GC, this is another variable, in this new collection, that is grouped students dot, there is a new method which is introduced, that is default if empty. And after that, when you do select new, then you can define what you want the data, that is like student name is equal to s dot name. So if you avoid this, that is if you avoid this default if empty, then you will get the same result like we used to get for inner join, that is nothing but the common one, the only matching one of the both the collections. But if you want to get the data of the left collection, even though there is no matching data, then you have to use default if empty. But in this case, since we are dealing with objects, so if we use C dot class teacher directly, then this C for the record which is not matching in B will be null. So because it is saying default if empty, so if the C is not matching, the default of the student is nothing but your null data, so it will give you null. So then this will throw a null reference exception. So to handle that, we will check if C is equal to null, then return no teacher, else return class teacher. So this we will see how it happens, so over the code. But now, as I said before, you will notice that syntax for the same thing in method based syntax is a little complicated. So if you see here, students dot join, so again notice here we are not using group join, it is using join, then classes, then the outer key selector, and then the inner key selector, then two variables which we are using. So this till here it was same. Now lambda expression new, instead of defining any new set of data, we have to return these two variables itself. So that means the collections which we are coming inside itself. We have to close this join, then we have to use dot select mini, and this method uses two parameters. So first one is the variable which we use x, such that x dot CLS, so that is nothing but this data we want to get the default, so even if there is no matching, so we have to use x dot CLS, not the student. So x dot CLS dot default if empty. So here how we are defining it for this, like that we have to define it here. And second parameter, again we have to define two parameters, that is st comma scl, what some new variables, and here you have to define the new type which you want to return. So that is new student name is equal to sorry, there is a typing mistake here, that is instead of s dot name we should have st dot name. Class teacher is equal to, again it should be cl is equal to null. If it is null, then no teacher, else cl dot class teacher. So there's a small typing mistake here, but now you can see it is very complicated here. You have to use some new way of returning. Instead of defining a new type, then you have to use select many, and then in select many there is a new syntax where you have to use the default if empty. So it's always suggestible, like for left outer join, preferably use the query based syntax than using the method based syntax. So this I have just written here for your knowledge, but I will always suggest you to go with the query based syntax. And there are very less scenarios in real time where you might need this, and if at all you need this, then definitely go for query based syntax instead of method based syntax. So I will show you a demo of this also in the code, but I won't be using the method based syntax. I'll be using the query based syntax. So now I am in Visual Studio, and you can see this is the code which we used for our inner join. So in inner join we were just joining the students and classes as a plain set of join. So if you run this, you get a flat data wherein we are just joining the two collections and putting the data which are matching. But as you would have noticed previously also, there was one particular student who didn't have any standard, so that data is missing here. So if your scenario is in such a way that you want that data also, then you have to go for left outer join, so that the collection which you are using on the left, that is nothing but your first collection, will get all the data even if there is no matching data in the second collection. So this is the syntax which we used for inner join. So we will do a slight modification here. So that is nothing but after our equal to relationship which we are telling here, we have to introduce the into keyword and saying maybe some grouped classes. So this is a new variable which we are introducing. So this syntax again you have seen already in group join, but now when it comes to left outer join, you have to introduce a new thing here where you have to introduce saying from a new variable, maybe gc in grouped classes. So this data dot default if empty. So that is nothing but you are telling, so whenever you are selecting from this particular variable, even if it is empty, then return a default type. So if this is not there, it will just ignore it. So if you have put, that means it will say even if I don't find any data, it is empty, then return me at least the default of it. So since we are dealing with classes and all, like this is the student class, so default means nothing but null. So the standard which we are getting, that will come as null. So now if you are using internally the class teacher name, so you have to check for null reference, because otherwise you might get a null reference exception. So here instead of saying C, now I have to say GC. So as you remember in group join, I told like the second collections variable will not be available inside, so only this collection will be available. So I can use like this also, but in this case, since we have default if empty and there is one data which is there in the first collection and not having a matching in the second collection, that data when it comes here, this guy will replace it with a default value, that is nothing but null. So in that case, this GC will come as null and you will get a null reference exception. So if you want to check that, I'll just run it. So it will print the half of the data, and finally when it reaches to a place where he get the student, this particular student who doesn't have a standard, instead of ignoring now, since we have default if empty, it will return a default value. So default is nothing but null. So now you can see the GC is null. So we should avoid this scenario. Instead, what we have to do is, if we have to do a null check, so we can say if GC is equal to null, then maybe we can give some data saying no teacher, else we will return the class teacher's name. So now if this you see, and when you run this, now you will see all the data and the new student also with the information no teacher. So this is the benefit of having left outer join, wherein you are not missing any data from your left collection. So this particular scenarios you might occur in real time, wherein you are dealing with two collections and you on the left collection you have some data for which you want to get the matching data from the right, and if at all it is not there, still you have to display it instead of ignoring it. So in such scenarios you have to go for left outer join, and then you have to remember this default if empty syntax. And as I have said previously, the method based syntax is little complicated, so I will always suggest not to go for it, go for the query based syntax. I hope the joins were clear in LINQ. It might sound little complicated in the beginning, but just take some collections and try out. Maybe like for example students and classes, so they have some relationship, or maybe employees and departments, or any particular data like which you think there will be a relationship between these two, and use two collections and try to use this join, and after 2-3 trials you will understand the difference and you will feel comfortable with this. Initially you might feel this is little complicated, but try out, you will start enjoying the joins. So if you like this video, put some comments in the comment section. If you have any queries, just post it in the comments, we will try to answer them. And if you like our videos, do subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified for our future videos. Thank you.